This is also something I always say to startups. Don't be too determined on setting specific goals, but rather look at the growth. It's hard to say, I want this number 3 months from now, because it's so hard to say. You don't even know what you're building. But keep looking at the growth every single week, every single day. That's much more useful in the beginning. Hey everyone, this is Heini and Hassan here, and welcome to Founders Weekly, where we cover the news for startup founders and tell stories we can learn from. Today, we are talking crazy startup ideas, and yes, it will involve an airline for dogs. We are also going to dig deep into one of the biggest fundraisers in AI and one of the biggest fundraisers in Europe. My co-host today is Hassan Bazzi. He's a founder, a developer, and a friend. Welcome, Hassan.
Hello, good to be back, Heini.
Great to have you. And last time you were on the East Coast, I do recall that. Where are you now?
So today I'm in South Lebanon. So I'm visiting home a little bit. Yeah. So we're not going to let a war zone stop us from doing the podcast, right?
We need to do the podcast wherever we are in the world. Okay.
Absolutely.
Let's stay safe out there. Let's go straight to our big story. British AI startup Wayve raises $1 billion in their C round. And this is a fascinating story with all kinds of different perspectives. We're going to dive deep into this one. It's a very unique startup that could be a game changer in different ways. So first, let's have a look at the fundraise. It is their C round, and the investment was led by SoftBank, Microsoft, and Nvidia. So I'm not a huge fan of SoftBank. But what about the other two, Nvidia and Microsoft? What do you think, Hassan?
I mean, these are the two to have, right? If you're any form of AI company, and they are an AI company. We'll touch a lot more on that later. So you definitely want Nvidia and Microsoft backing you. What's interesting, though, once again, Microsoft is there investing in all the rising stars. It's been a thing since we started the podcast, basically.
Yeah. And what are they doing here? Are they making sure that if this becomes really big, they want to be a part of it? Or are there other reasons why it could also just be making money, right? Like take an acquisition of GitHub, for example. They had a big strategic thing. They want to buy them and do something really big with them. What are they doing here?
Well, a lot of these AI companies, I would say, when Microsoft comes in, it's a lot less about the money, really. And again, it's about the compute. It's about the data centers. It's being able to call up Sadia and say, hey, things are going crazy right now. We're going to need more compute. Can we use a little bit more of this data center somewhere? And them having that kind of connection. So I really think this is all about compute. And that's why you want Microsoft there.
And we're talking $1 billion and like a C round builder, which is quite a lot. I know you always talk about compute, but we'll get deeper into the product in a second, but do they really need $1 billion here?
I mean, let's see. Well, we're going to talk, I think, a little bit about their competitors later, but one of their competitors that is not doing too well right now raised $4 billion, and not that long ago either. So you need a lot of money in this space.
And where's the money? Is it compute or are there other things too?
For the most part, it's compute. I mean, some of it's going to go into, the classic going out there and going to market and yada, yada, and headcount, et cetera. But it really goes into compute. I mean, what other companies are raising that much money? And very early on, we're talking, what is this, a C round, I think?
C round, exactly. Yeah, we're up to 1.3 billion right now, totally raised.
Yeah, that's insane. And that's a C round.
That is wild. Yeah.
That is really wild.
For a European startup too.
Exactly. Last company I was at, they raised a C round. I think we raised 20 million. So
yeah, that's pretty common. 20, 30 million.
It's a lot different.
Not $1 billion.
Yeah, yes. Exactly.
Let's dig a little bit deeper into the company. Wayve was founded in 2017 by Alex Kendall and Amar Shah. Alex is the current CEO. His journey began with award-winning research at the University of Cambridge, where he explored computer vision and robotics. His passion for autonomous vehicles led him to co-found Wayve in 2017. Amar's expertise lies in machine learning and robotics. So definitely, Hassan, these guys have pretty relevant backgrounds, huh?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's the background you want, right? What's interesting to me is the robotics aspect of it. We're going to talk again. I keep saying we're going to talk about stuff, but I mean, we're doing it.
We'll talk about the product.
we are going to do it. I'm very excited about this product, but specifically the robotics part of their experience really matters, and it's going to show because they're really pushing this embodied AI thing, which is essentially teaching robots how to look at the world and how to interact and how to make decisions.
University of Cambridge is involved here, I would say again. And if we look back at DeepMind, one of the old leaders in AI, they also, some of the founders also had connections. Do you see University of Cambridge as a leader here?
They absolutely are. I think Cambridge has been a super leader in the AI field and essentially the computer field, really, in the UK. You have Oxford that kind of opted more on the health tech side of things. They're doing a lot more stuff with, I don't know, let's say therapy stuff or stuff that has to do with biological or biotech. So all the different like big universities in the UK have nicely went into these verticals, I would say. And it's nice because a lot of amazing stuff's coming out of Cambridge, like you said.
Super impressive. Okay, let's get to the fun part here. Let's talk about what they do. So Wayve's core focus is on embodied AI, a paradigm shift in AI for self-driving vehicles. Unlike traditional rule-based systems, Wayve's approach integrates advanced AI directly into cars and robots. They call this AV 2.0, and some people call it the ChatGPT moment of autonomous vehicles. I mean, those are humongous statements. Is it that big a shift here? What are we talking?
I mean, all right, let's take it back.
Let's talk about what it is. Let's take what is the old system way of doing it? What's the new way of doing it?
Sure. So the old system is pretty much how everyone else does it right now, which
Cruise,
is
Waymo, all these guys.
Everyone, right? Like you have 30, 40, 50 different systems, right? And you have all the sensors and this data are bringing stuff in. And then you have 30 or 40 different machine learning algorithms. And each one is doing one thing really, really well. Like one of them is just spotting a pedestrian. That's it. It's just like a giant computer vision model that takes in camera data and it's like, this is a pedestrian. And then you write code.
Raises his hand to some big brain and says, I saw somebody.
I saw somebody. And then you need to actually go in there and code and say, well, if I see somebody, if they're 2 meters away, I'll take the risk. Let's just do it. If they're 1 meter away, maybe I should slow down. If they're closer than that, then, hit the brakes. But it's still a person. It's still code that is being, like the decision making itself, right, is still happening at a human coding level. Let's just say it's not happening at the AI level. Obviously, there's good and bad for that. So that's one aspect, right? The other aspect, which is very interesting, is that they use, again, computer like vision cameras and radars. And there's only one other company that does that, and that got a lot of shit for it, and that was Tesla. Tesla switched from LiDAR and all of that, and they're like, you know what, the best thing is actually just the camera. And so they're doing something very similar there.
Well, just to be clear, when they said the best thing, they meant we can't afford the LiDAR, so now we're going to do this, right?
I don't know if it's like afford the LiDAR. Essentially, like it's a back to basics thing. What's interesting is that this company was doing just camera and radar before Tesla. I think Tesla did it like last year or something. Yeah. It's kind of a going to basics thing because Tesla sat down and said, hey, how do we drive cars? We just look around. Sure, like maybe we can get a little bit more with radar specifically, like if we can see things to the peripheral vision. But we're just looking around. We're able to mostly drive very safely. So why don't we just get really good at that? And that's what they're doing here. So they're kind of simplifying things quite a bit, dealing with a lot less data and being able to just take in exactly what you need and make decisions off of it.
And what I heard the CEO say the other day was also that we're now seeing regular cars being released that have this hardware built in. So all we need are these things you just said. And some of the cars they release, they're being built with this.
I mean, that's them also saying like, hey, our costs are going to be lower. But to be fair, they do offer a full sensor package, right? So you can go in and buy the full sensor package and then put the software on top of that. Now, I don't know if it's time to flip to this, but I wanted to bring this up. I do think they're going to have a lot of challenges when it comes to actually deploying this.
Sorry, it's like before we do that,
then let's not.
Can we talk about can we talk about what this system is different, right? So the difference here is the other system had multiple machine learning, and this is end to end. This is like one brain, right? Is that what we're saying?
So The main difference is that the decision making is fully AI. That was not the case beforehand, right? Beforehand, you have a bunch of parameters, you make a decision. Here, it's literally, hey, we're essentially training a model, right? That's taking in hours and hours and hours and hours of computer data, of sensor data. And just like ChatGPT, where you give it a sentence and based on, petabytes of whatever data, it figures out the next word. This just figures out the next turn or the next decision or the next break. So that's what it is, which is a bit scary, I guess, but interesting nonetheless.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen videos of it drive and so on. It's incredibly impressive, I must say. But I mean, that's the next thing. If I make a rule that says if you're 2 meters from a child, you need to push the brakes. This system is not going to have that. This is going to think, oh, there's a child. Yeah, I probably need to slow down.
Yeah. I mean, it's as good as its data, right? It's kind of like you're doing a ChatGPT, and if you feed it a whole bunch of, I don't know, Nazi stuff, then it's just going to be pro-Nazi, and that's it. So you got to just feed it a whole lot of useful data and a whole lot of different data. Tesla right now is not like struggling with this, but I remember Elon tweeted something like 1 out of 10,000th of the data we get back from full self-driving from Tesla is useful. Not because it's bad data, but just because most of the data is just people driving in a straight line. Which is, how are you going to make the AI better with that? You can't.
Yeah. No. So you had a point before I interrupted you. Sorry, what was that?
Actually, this is perfect transition, right? Like, my point is, where are they going to get the data from? Tesla's doing it because they're the number one auto manufacturer in the world right now. They already gave FSD to everyone or whatever a month ago, right? And that was just so they can get data. They weren't being nice, Apparently as soon as next week, they're releasing it so that you don't have to like touch the wheel every 5 minutes or whatever it is. I mean, that's huge, right? So now their point is we want to try to get as much raw data. We don't want any human intervention. We don't want anything. We want to see how our AI is doing in the real world so we can make it better. Where is Wayve going to get their data from? I mean, they don't really have any big commercial deals yet, as far as I understand.
No, but they need to do partnerships, right? They need to do partnerships with people that build cars and put them in there, because that's the second thing I want to touch on here is also they're not going to build a car. They are testing, but they're not going to build a car, which I think is great because then you can really focus on the software. I think, you have one challenge that is humongous as a startup. Do you really need another one? Actually building a car, which is incredibly complex. So I think that's the right decision.
Absolutely. I love this. You know how much I love this. I don't know if you want to call it a business model, product model in general, right? Yeah. Take a really big industry, take something small, make it really, 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 really good. I mean, it's the best way to go, especially if you're doing it with software, because then you don't have to build a giant factory in China somewhere.
Exactly. So the one other thing I want to touch about on the product and data, you keep saying where they're going to get the data and so on. It's important to say that they don't need as much data. They need data for training, but they're not going to build HD maps like the other guys do. So the model for Cruise and Waymo is they're going to build this insane maps that are very detailed, and then they're going to drive within that. That's not the idea here. The idea here is to train a brain that figures that out just like a human, just better.
Exactly. Again, I don't know. It's not me that's going to make that decision. It's going to be, Ford and GM. And you're going to go to them and say, hey, I have this model. It's amazing. It's great. We've trained it on whatever, a few thousand hours of someone driving. And we've driven it around the UK for, I think they've been driving it for something like 2 years now, which is very impressive. But how many hours is that? And I don't know, how does GM make that decision and just say, okay, cool, yeah, we trust this, let's try it?
The thing is here also, they could also just be building a much better self-driving, meaning let's take it in stages where we don't go totally driverless, no steering wheel at all, just do this better. And that could be step one, and then get a shitload of data with a partnership with Honda or somebody. It could be something like that.
Right. I would love for them to just install these whatever systems in cars, especially if it's just a software play. Maybe they can, convince GM, hey, all we want to do is we want to pretend to make the decisions. We're not going to do anything. And we're just going to compare it to what the real human actually did. That's it. Yeah. I mean, that would be amazing for them, actually. That's super powerful. But again, you need someone to do that with them. And it's probably going to come at a cost of some sort of investment or exclusive partnership or something. Although I know that their whole point is they want to stay away from it, and they market it that way, right? Like we can sell to all of the car manufacturers. We don't need to just like have one. So
no. So I'm gonna say I believe in this company. I think this is the way forward. Not trying to make rules for 10,000 things. It just got too complex and sort of for a reason like we can't do it like this. I think this might be the way forward. Exactly when, that's hard to say, but I think this might be the way forward. I must say.
I fully agree. I think so too. Again, find a problem in a giant field, do something amazing, and go all in on it.
And then we think it's incredible. I think it's incredible they raised $1 billion. It's a UK-based company. They really have, and they have the right partners and the money to make this. And I watched a couple of interviews with the founder. Incredibly thoughtful guy. Super impressed by this all around, I must say.
Oh yeah, I mean they had, I think, Bill Gates a year ago. They'd like put the system on some super simple car. I don't know what it was, like some Toyota or a Honda or something. And Bill Gates are just like shocked, you know, how well it was doing.
It is amazing. It is amazing. Yeah. So I'm excited.
So
okay,
it's great.
With that, we're gonna take a short break. And this is one of the wild ideas in startup. This one is a big one. We're going to do self-driving in a different way, and we're going to raise $1 billion for it. Yeah, we're impressed. When we come back, we're going to talk about another wild idea within startups, and it is somewhat related to, shall we say, dogs on airplanes. So stay tuned. Okay, we are back. Today's guest is Henrik Werdelin. Henrik is the co-founder of Bark, formerly known as BarkBox, as well as a founding partner of Prehype, a venture development firm headquartered in New York. Henrik, welcome.
Thank you.
So I invited you on to talk about a specific thing, one of your latest ventures. And I think that is related to let's say a pretty wild idea. But before we get to that, let's talk a little bit about BarkBox. What is it? How did that come about? And so on? Because is it a tech company? Is it a animal company? What the heck is it?
I think that's a good question. We started BarkBox in 2011, and I think at the time it wasn't really meant to be a kind of a big idea. It was basically my co-founders and I had started a few companies before, and we're kind of big on this idea of just building a profitable business. And so
it's about time.
Matt, my co-founder at the time, the co-founder had a Great Dane at the time that didn't really had a lot of cool stuff to play with. And so we basically thought maybe we can do one of these boxes with cool stuff that we can put in. So that's the basic idea. The first business was just a box with 2 treats, 2 toys, and a chew. And then since then, we moved on to anything from dental products to food to airlines.
Wow, it's a full selection for dogs, I would assume, right? And that went really well. And you SPAC'd or IPO'd the business in 2019, 2020. When did you do that?
Yeah, 21, we took it public at New York Stock Exchange.
Fantastic. Well done. It's incredible. Like we talked about being focused and doing one thing well. And I guess you did that pretty damn well.
Appreciate it. I mean, it makes it easier when it's all about making dogs happy.
Yeah, exactly. That's always a good thing. So, well, that's where we get to the next thing, right? That's also about making dogs happy. So I saw this promotional thing for Bark Air, and first thing I do is look at the date. Is it April 1st? What is it? And I literally sort of double checked, is this real or what? But tell us what Bark Air is.
Well, Bark Air is an airline for dogs where we try to solve the problem that a lot of us with big dogs have, which is basically if you want to go anywhere where you have to fly, the only option you have is really to put it down in the cargo bay. And
that is obviously huge. I have small dogs for that particular reason. Let's put it that way, because it's painful. We moved to the US. We had to put in the cargo bay. That's no fun at all. So tell us what you've built.
Well, so we built a first-class airline where we allow dogs to buy a first-class ticket to currently fly either New York, LA or New York, London. And then they can invite their human with them. And then we've tried to create an experience design that is really optimized for if a dog was to fly first class, what would it do and what would it enjoy? So anything from squirrel in-flight entertainment videos to non-alcoholic champagne made of chicken broth to, like whatever you can think of. And so it's been a full kind of like journey down the rabbit hole of if you were to design an experience from scratch for a dog's perspective, how would you do?
I'm thinking you guys had a lot of fun in front of the whiteboard here.
I mean, like This is honestly an idea that's been brewing around for a long time. I mean, like, we've always seen Bark as being in the business of making dogs and their people happy, not as being a stuff in a box business. And so the mental model for all us have always been Disney for dogs. And Disney we find inspiring because it's tough to kind of figure out if it's a media company or if it's a park company or if it's a products company. It's a little bit of everything. And so in the same thing, we've always thought ourselves like that. And so the idea of having services and experiences that we would like to sell to our customers is something that we've had for a long time. And so this is one of those ideas that's been brewing pretty much from the beginning of the company.
I really love that you stuck to the tone of voice too right now, even when we asked, because I don't know, Heini, if you've seen the FAQ page, like that's the first thing I looked at.
I saw it. Yeah,
oh my, it's if anyone is listening, watching, just go check out that FAQ page. Like it's really like dogs are just first class citizens, you know, and humans are like second class, you know. Yeah, you can bring your human if you want, whatever, they can come. Like it's I love it.
I think that's interesting, and that's something we've done. Even if you sign a contract with us, like if you get a job contract, we have like small, I would say, like not jokes, but we write like that all the way through down to our contracts. And so I do think when you're building something, in order for you to communicate just how insane you are about trying to make dogs happy as they make you, you have to kind of do it everywhere, right? And so even like our finance team, I saw like a deck the other day where it says something like it was like the, you know, whatever budgets. And then there was a little asterisk in the years. And I was like, I wonder what that is. And so I went down in the notes and the asterisk was something to the extent of like, note, this is in human years, not in dog years.
Yeah. That's cool. Even your termination is like 1 year, which is actually 1/8 of a year. But yes. So in practical terms, do you fly every week now? And I think you fly Gulfstream. So smaller airplanes at a high cost, and I totally get that. You got to start somewhere. Tell us a little bit about the practical operation at this point.
Yeah, so I think the envision is to do a little bit like Tesla did. You kind of like, in order to get to the sedan, you have to start with the high luxury sports car.
Just like Uber did too.
And same thing with Uber with the black cars, right? And so I think we very much have leaned into that way of thinking. We have designed basically this 747 version with these suites that we would like to go to in the not too distant future. And so until we get that thing done, we're flying Gulfstreams. And a lot of the experience is really about how do you make sure that the dog kind of gets like a good flight, more than necessarily that the flight specifically is done for the dog. But of course, like anything from blankets to, you know, like the pheromones to make them relax to whatever, like, you know, we have in the plane is designed for the dog. But the current planes are Gulfstreams.
I saw some pictures of it. It looks amazing. So I want you to check out the website to see what the experience actually looks like. How often do you fly now?
We fly once a week right now. I think it's once a week. Maybe it's something like that. You know, obviously we're not, you know, we haven't been doing it more than a few weeks now. So we're just getting started and we're trying to understand how much demand is there and how much can we fly. One of the things that we were adamant on was to have a pretty regular schedule because we would like people to be able to, for example, go to New York from LA or New York from London with their dog. And the problem had been in the past that you might even be able to hitch a ride with, you know, another service that does private air travel, but then you didn't know when you can come back. And so we're trying to be a little bit kind of consistent with it so that you can bring your dog with you to work if you have to go for a few weeks to New York, for example.
So there's a predictable way of sort of getting back. Amazing. So can we ask, like, how is it going? I know it's early, but are you full or are you half? What's happening right now?
Yeah, I mean, like a lot, you know, I don't follow kind of like every plane that much, but I think we wanted to do this for a long time. And so it's one of those things where we just have to do it.
Yeah, and you have the users too, like the people you have in your database. They love dogs, right? They
love dogs, and you know, honestly, you know, we're a public listed company. We're frugal, we're profitable, and so you know, we also don't want to do anything that doesn't allow us to keep things going for a long time. So we were obviously like sensitive to like, is this something that we were pretty certain that we would get a lot of attention around it. And so I think for that, we could probably justify some of the investment. But, for it to work, it has to work for the long run. And so I guess the short version is that we've been kind of blown away by the take up of it. Like we've sold out most of the planes as far as I know, like of the one that's kind of coming up. And then we're just adding them on the back of it. And so I honestly think it's going, like consider it's a very expensive ticket, right? Like it's $6,000 one way in the US and it's $8,000 to that. Like it's an obscene amount of money for most people. But I mean, like the second we put it online, we had not only a lot of people who called and asked if they could travel with the dogs, but we have people who called and asked if they could travel with their pet pigs, with their different types of birds. At this point, we're doing the dogs only. Long version of saying it's been going better than we could ever had hoped.
Amazing. So we touched on this before, but I do think you guys your marketing is what you guys do well. And I just heard this story about the CEO going on a special journey. Could you tell us a little bit about that, Henrik?
Yeah, I mean, like, if you want to invoke a little bit of pain or misery to your co-founder, then
and you do want that once in a while.
The thing you can think of is to put this person in a dog crate, kennel, and then fly him for 4 hours from Miami to New York, which is what we did. This was like an idea that when first it was brought up, obviously everybody was like, "This is the funniest thing ever," and so. Matt, my co-founder and the CEO of the company, got put in a crate and got put in the cargo hold. And then fortunately, we couldn't actually fly him because that was illegal. And so we had to kind of close the cargo bays. And, I think we drove the plane around for a bit just to kind of like give the feeling of I
bet that was enough.
But I think he spent like a long time there. I want to say he spent like hours and hours in there. And at the last point, he was like, Matt has been obsessed about this idea for a long run, but at the end of like having been in the crate for that long, he was like, okay, this is the only thing we have to do now. This has to work because there's no way we can't come up with a better way of getting dogs kind of from coast to coast.
Amazing. That really motivated him, right?
I mean, I definitely did. And it was very enjoyable for the rest of us.
Of course. I think it's interesting because it also just invokes like so many feelings and within dog owners, just dog lovers. Like I don't necessarily have a dog, but I immediately was like, oh my God, I'm never like, if I do have a dog, I'm never sending them in a crate ever again. I had never thought about it before too. So
it's rough.
Yeah.
I mean, like I've been on many planes, because obviously I go back and forth from Europe to the US quite a lot. I'd say no less than 5 times have I been on a plane where you could hear the dog whining all the way across. Like this is 8 hours of just sitting there and hearing a dog that does not enjoy it. And so, I mean, like it's pretty insane that the travel industry hasn't come up with a better way of doing it.
Totally. But it is right now because you're leading it.
I have a super quick question, actually. I mean, we kind of already answered it, but not really. So when you're launching something like this, I mean, you said how, okay, this is something that has to work, right? But what did you guys have in mind, like before you launched? What was going to be the thing where you're like, okay, if we don't reach a certain level within a certain time, then we're cutting this? Did you have like numbers like this? Or was it more like, we're just going to, figure it out as we go?
I mean, I'm sure like we have a very, very sensible CFO that keeps us very honest a lot. And it's a very good counterbalance to Matt and I. But I think the reality is that some of these things are probably only doable in a founder-led company because you have to have a little bit of a leap of faith, right? And it wasn't because there wasn't a lot of people who was kind of like saying that this was a bad idea, but, and why would we do that? But I really think, it's one of those, I think, seductive and very viral ideas, even like when you just talk about it, when somebody come in saying, hey, we're doing a first class or plane for dogs, and you work in a company that's filled with people who are dog lovers. I mean, like most people are like, okay, this sounds crazy. And I think from a brand perspective, and what Heini was saying is that I think one of the things that made us kind of keep going and kind of made us both big, but also compete well against others is that we have a little bit of that audacity. We have a perspective. We dare doing a few things that other people don't dare. And we are kind of insanely obsessive about, like just making dogs happy. And I think not just making them happy, but also create like, as Disney probably would think about, make magic for them, right? Yeah, it was definitely an idea that had to get a little bit of like the push, but I think once we got the snowball a little bit formed, like it started to roll pretty fast.
Awesome.
Incredible. Okay, we'll talk a few questions and we'll talk about the podcast. Okay, we are back. So the first question I have here is it important when you build a startup to have a contrarian idea? Does it have to be like a contrarian idea? This one definitely is, and some of them are, but does it have to be?
I don't think they have to be a contrarian. When we started BarkBox, I think the idea in itself was pretty obvious and not kind of like adventurous. I think we probably had a contrarian way of executing it. I came from the background of MTV, where MTV was never about the utility of playing music, right? It wasn't how do you go to a concert or 5 ways to play a guitar. It was about having music at heart and, being about rock and roll. I think Bark has always been the same thing. It's been about the lifestyle of having a dog. So I don't think you have to have a contrarian idea, but I think you, specifically in today's age with so much noise on the interweb, you have to have a perspective and you have to have something that people can emotionally connect to.
What is Hassan?
I love the term you just used, contrarian execution. Really, like I'm a huge fan of doing things much different and a very like invoking empathy within customers, because a lot of people don't. Like there are so many companies out there that you go and you say, oh, someone else did it, why would I do it? Someone else did it, why would I do it? But it would be so surprising if you just add a little bit of quality, a little bit of empathy to customers, how far you can go. And clearly that's what Henrik and his team did. So,
and one thing, if I may just add to it, because I'm kind of obsessing about this right now, I have this new thesis that we talk a lot about. We call it relationship capital, which is really about in a world where AI allow everybody to be pretty competitive on a lot of pieces of the stack. Like they can render imagery real fast, they can write copy real fast, they can compete in SEO. Yeah. I think one of the things that we have to be very mindful of as entrepreneurs is how do we create that last mile relationship? How do we predict what products and services the customers want so that we have them ready before they might even have shown intent? And how do we have then a connection so if we're offering it to them, they're buying it from us instead of somebody else?
I mean, that could also just be, that could be brand, right? So all these things, people can do this, but with this brand, you can do it better or in a different way, right?
100%.
Okay, so I'm going to stay a little bit with that. And I feel like we almost answered this question, but I'm still going to go there. Is it easier or harder to get funding with a contrarian idea, right? So we talked a little bit about it. So let's take Bark here as an example right away. Would it even be possible for this to be a venture funded thing?
I don't know. I hate to be the one right now I hate to be the one in the current market that goes out and make that pitch. But you know what?
That's a rough.
I honestly think, and I mean, like, we've all kind of spoken to a lot of VCs in the world, and I think as somebody who's still operating, you kind of like love to say contrarian and slightly rude things about VCs. I do think it's less about the contrarian, and I think it's more about the matchmaking. It is about finding, is your idea so contrarian that you can't find the contrarian person on the other side? And I think a lot of VCs actually, see themselves as pretty contrarian views, specifically some of the better ones. Like they try to sig when everybody sacks. And so I don't think you have to, but I think you have to have something that for whatever reason emotionally connects with an investment manager somewhere.
I agree. I think for me also, like the founder needs to be a contrarian founder. Like for me, that's the answer to that. If you're going to bring that kind of idea, is this the right like founder or founder team that's actually going to get it there, right? Because a lot of times people might have crazy ideas, but nowhere near, I guess, like the founder relationship to actually execute on it. So
I think that's 100% right. I think of it as kind of customer founder fit. Like you need to have something where that connection is very clear and very believable.
Yeah. There's a reason. Why are you doing this? There's a reason why you do this. And before you came on, Henrik, we talked about the British company Wayve that just closed $1 billion round. And that was a contrarian idea. Everyone was doing autonomous vehicles in a specific way. They came around in 2017 and said, we're going to do this differently. And they had raised before this week, they had raised $200-300 million. And now they raised $1 billion round on what at least a couple of years ago was very contrarian. Now it's like, maybe that's the only way.
Yeah, and I think if you look at some of the companies we all admire, like take Apple, right? I imagine being the one who walked into the boardroom and saying, we're making desktop computers, now we're going to make MP3 players, or the Amazon going in and saying, we're selling books, now we're going to do a cloud hosting service provider. I think even more impressive than the people who raised a bunch of money is the people who've shown, then 10 years later, that contrarian view is actually the thing that would kind of build them their next growth cycle. And we often see it as being quite obvious when they did it, because of course Amazon would do it AWS. But I can only imagine how complicated that pitch would have been at that time.
Apparently, Tesla is about to have a giant pivot into robotaxi. It's a very serious thing, complete focus on it. We'll see.
We'll see. They promised August 8th. August 8th, they're going to launch a robotaxi.
Why August 8th? Is that a...
No, they just tweeted it.
Oh, did they? Oh, I had no idea. Okay.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, it came out. I was going to do an episode that we didn't mention Elon Musk's name, and here we go. But he tweeted a few weeks ago that 8/8 robotaxi. That's the only thing that was in this tweet.
Ah, I see. I thought it was because it was next to my birthday, but
it could have been there before he picked it. Who knows?
Chances are high.
Yeah, who knows?
Cool. And we are almost there. I'm going to just give you a little bit. I have full transparency on this podcast. I know, Henrik, you're on a different podcast too, but I share with all our listeners how it's going, and it's going well. I was traveling last week, so we had a little bit issues with uploading the podcast, so it was a little bit late. So numbers are a little bit down, but I think that is fine. It took a day before YouTube was uploaded, so numbers are a little bit down based on that. Other than that, subscribers keep going up, 8% up from last week. Another cool thing I think is that, I know this is true for most podcasts, they have somewhat of a long tail. We've had 600-700 people listen to the episode within a week, but we see now that over time they actually get to 1,000. So I kind of like that we're getting to a point where we have 1,000 people listening. This is episode number 9. The next one will be 10. I sort of committed to doing 10 episodes on a journey to 10,000, not episodes, but listeners. We'll see about that. But at least 1,000, I think, is kind of cool, I must say. What do you guys think about that?
You know what? One thing that I was thinking about the other day when I was looking at my own podcast numbers is that we also get so numbed with numbers. And if you took 1,000 people and put them in a theater, it would be shitload of people. It would be an immense amount of people, and you'd be overwhelmed by it. And so I think maybe it's also good sometimes just to be slightly humbled by how incredible it is that 1,000 people can be bothered sitting and talking to two people with a Danish dialect and very smart things. But so I think 1,000 people is incredible. I'm trying not to blind myself by hundreds of millions and stuff like that, and just be happy that somebody is showing up.
Totally. I appreciate it.
I love that. I love that perspective so much. And again, this is the content you're creating out of this is also long tail, right? There's so much you're going to see, the growth, the stuff we're talking about week after week. Imagine a year from now, just the amazing trove of content that we're going to, because you're doing this every single week. For me, that was the most impressive thing from the very first day. Every single week, Heine's just working on this, and he's a busy man. Trust me, I know.
Somewhere in the world.
Yeah. So that's awesome.
And if not to talk about my co-host, and Henrik Hassan is in southern Lebanon right now recording. So we are definitely all over.
Oh, yeah. Everywhere. But I was going to ask you, Heini, actually. So you committed to 10. 10 is the next one.
Yes.
But I assume
I'm going to keep going. I can't, this is the thing. I just, when I do something, I just keep going, right? So I'm definitely going to keep going. I enjoy it very much. I'd love to see bigger numbers, but this is also something I always say to startups. Don't be too determined on setting specific goals, but rather look at the growth. That's what you need to look. Just keep saying, it's hard to say, I want this number 3 months from now, because it's so hard to say. You don't even know what you're building, but keep looking at the growth every single week, every single day. That's much more useful in the beginning. And the growth is doing great.
I'll add one thing to that. I read this book the other day that I'm getting quite obsessed about called Why Greatness Can't Be Planned by Kenneth Stanley. He's a professor in AI. Was professor in Florida, built a company, sold it to Uber, became head of AI at Uber, and then he went to OpenAI. And now he's doing a social network kind of thing. Anyway, he has this thesis that basically we can't make growth an objective, because then we'll never get there. What you have to do is create these, what he called open-endedness systems. And one of the way that you kind of do that is by following what he refers to as interestingness. And if you as a founder with great intensity and a lot of energy and all the smarts and wits and all this stuff and luck pursue interestingness, then that would create like the stepping stones that would lead you to kind of like big growth numbers and great discoveries. And for some reason, this theory was about artificial general intelligence, but I actually think for entrepreneurship, it's the first time somebody articulated something where I'm like, that sounds right. That seems like a cool way of doing it.
When it comes to leadership, that is so very true, because I can be motivated by numbers saying, look, we're going to grow 100% this year. It's amazing. But people come to Heine, that just isn't an idea. That's just a number. Tell us we're going to do something, change something. And that motivates people, right? So I think that's very much aligned with what you're saying. Perfect. We have come to the end. Please make sure you follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And please leave a review and rating if it really helps. For all of you on YouTube, please make sure you check out Raw Startup. A lot of good videos on how to build a startup. This has been Founders Weekly. Now stop listening and go build something.